The Last of Us is HBO's second biggest series premiere. Mando and Grogu return, and no, Vin Diesel's not going to be in Avatar 3. We're talking all this and more today on the Chatter After Daily. Greetings, guys, gals, and non binary pals. Welcome to the Chatter After Daily, the show where we chat, argue, wax poetic about the latest in movie news and pop culture. I'm your host, Mike. Joining me is my co host, Ryan Cam. Ryan, there's not a ton of stories to talk about, so I guess we should just jump into The Last of Us today, huh? It's Tlu Tuesday.
I mean, I mean, now that I've actually seen the first episode, I actually had to see it on HBO Max. But now that I've officially seen it cover to cover, yeah, I'm raring to talk about it because it was really good. So, I mean, it's and leading into the news story, the first news story, I mean, Last of Us is already cleaning up.
Yeah, it is. Guys, on this monumentous Tlu Tuesday is what I'm dubbing our Tuesday show at this point, because I feel like we're going to be talking about The Last of Us from now until the season finale. That's how big this show has gotten. It has received 4.7 million viewers for the premiere on Sunday. For perspective, that's the second biggest premiere in the last 10 years for HBO, only behind House of the Dragon, which came in at a crazy like 10 million viewers for that premiere, which I think really just puts into perspective how big House of the Dragon was, right? Because The Last of Us coming in second, and it's not even half the amount of viewership as House of the Dragon.
Yeah, and considering, there's this whole talk about cord cutting and how TV isn't as consumed as it once was.
Yep.
It's kind of like that old saying in Field of Dreams, if you build it, he will come. But in this case, if you build it, they will come. Because, I mean,
Oh yeah.
just watching the episode after the fact, the money was clearly on the screen. And clearly the story resonated with a lot of people. And Warner did a lot in the marketing department to say, hey, this is a big deal. You all should take a look at this. So it just looked like it was just all the right things happening at the right time. And that premiere could not have gone any better in terms of viewership and in terms of general quality because, yeah, the episode is really, really good.
Yeah. So while we're here, guys, we'll just take 5 minutes. Spoilers for The Last of Us episode 1. While we're here, give your thoughts. Like, what were your thoughts going into that premiere? I know you mentioned you had some prior knowledge of the franchise, but how was it getting that first, introduction to this version of the story?
I knew in the first 20 minutes, basically, when you see uh, the brother-in-law from The Mummy, I can't remember the actor's name, but the dude in 1968, and they're
Yeah.
doing that newscast sort of where he's explaining the fungal parasite and how that could potentially destroy everything. That might as well have been a big old, like, he might as well have been named Nostradamus because like he pretty much called it. Smash cut to 2003, which I remember living through that, and I would think I was like 6 or 7, and I still remember snippets of it. But I just remember seeing that, and I'm like, wow, 2003 was not that long ago in my mind, but apparently it was long ago for others. But just
20
seeing the
years.
20 years and just seeing the buildup of just how it goes from Joel and his daughter just having a normal day to
Yep.
just the world ending is just so well done. And there are several little notes that I picked up on. Like there's a student in her class who's like shaking like this. And
Yeah.
my limited knowledge of Last of Us, I was saying to myself, he's going to be a clicker. I know that for certain. And then everything with the old lady and just how that just turns just completely pear-shaped. And then you got the Easter egg, which I didn't pick up on playing the game, but I learned later on the movie that they watch is actually dropped in one of the games. I thought that was a
Yep.
very nice touch. Cobra versus the I can't remember the title of
Cobra
it.
versus the Viper, I think.
That's the one.
Yep.
I thought that was a very nice touch, all the way up to all the way up to the daughter dying because of that soldier and that whole thing, which that was my favorite part of the show, that plant and payoff at the end of the prologue and the plant and payoff at the end of the episode, where Joel didn't come through for his daughter, but Joel came through for what basically is going to be his surrogate daughter, for lack of a better word.
Right.
And just seeing that come full circle, that was very, very satisfying. And I liked how the episode communicated that there are no real good or bad guys. Everyone's very sus. Everyone's operating very much in shades of gray. Joel just barely lands on the good side, but just
Yeah.
barely. So does Ellie. So does the Fireflies. Really, I mean, the government people are, yeah. I mean, yeah, they're pretty bad, but
Yeah.
you need someone like that to be like, yeah, those guys are just probably the most diabolical moment of the episode is they find that girl who collapses and is like, if you take this shot, we're going to give you whatever you want. Gets the shot. Next thing you know, she dies. And I did not pick up that was the same girl until you saw her body in the back of that truck. You're like, we just saw.
Yeah.
Whoa. And
That's
that just hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, the one thing I love about that moment, right, is it is subtle. And once you pick up on that, it makes that ending even more impactful, right? Because they did the little scanner on the kid and you see that they tested positive for the virus. And so that's why they had to put the child down. And so when you see Ellie at the end of the episode test positive, that's why that guard is so on edge, and that's why Joel snaps, right? He has the flashback to that very same instance with his daughter, and I think that's what makes that moment so good. That setup and payoff is something that you can't do in a video game necessarily. That's the benefit of being a television series, because they are able to call back and flash back to those moments and tie them together in a way gameplay just can't quite capture.
Exactly. And there's just several little moments, like things you would blink and miss. Like I can't really describe it, but it's the moment where they go into the Fireflies hangout and
Yeah.
the person is stuck to the wall with like weeds and stuff coming out of its face and every part of its body, and it's just stuck to the wall. I heard it described as something out of like Annihilation, the Alex Garland movie.
Yeah.
And I just remember seeing that being like that's just, it's gorgeous and horrifying all at the same time. It's very clear that they were like, they looked at the game and they saw just how beautiful it looks, and they were just like, all right, we're just going to take that and put it on the screen, and you don't even have to pick up a controller to see it.
Yeah, that's what makes this, in my opinion, one of the best video game adaptations of all time, because it is taking what the game is, and like you said, you don't have to pick up a controller anymore. This is a story that I experienced 10 years ago now. Like this, The Last of Us is turning 10 this year. And I'm so glad these 4.7 million people and everyone else who are tuning in through HBO Max finally get a chance to experience it, and the beauty that storytelling can be in all mediums, whether that be books, movies, or even video games like The Last of Us. I'm glad we're starting to get a wider reach and people can start to see what they were missing with this franchise, because it's truly special.
Yeah, we're like one episode deep, and this show is already doing laps around every other video game thing that has been adapted into a movie, a show, whatever.
Yep.
It's like one episode in, and it's already like rocketed to number one. And I think maybe this is a topic we can explore later, and maybe I might be putting the cart before the horse. You would know more about this universe than I would, but I wonder how much juice they could squeeze out of The Last of Us, how many seasons they could do out of this. I don't know if this is planned on being a limited series or just being like a 2, 3, 4 season show. When I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, they're clearly setting up Ellie to be the one who is like, she's immune, so we're going to use her and to try and reverse some of this.
Right.
So as someone who is pretty much a novice to The Last of Us outside of some gameplay, I don't know how the story ends, but I was just sitting there thinking to myself, I wonder how long they can take this, because there's only so long we can see Joel and Ellie walking across the country trying to get to the tower. So
Right.
I'm not concerned because of the quality is already very high. I'm not concerned about the quality, but I was just sitting there thinking to myself, how far can they take this? And again, I'm new, so maybe I'm just putting the cart before the horse, but that was just a thought that was just in my head.
Yeah, that's a valid thought because it's very much a singular mission, right? Like Joel and Ellie, once they reach their destination, is that the end of it? Do they go their separate ways? What happens from that point forward? There are two games, The Last of Us Part 1 and The Last of Us Part 2. So they can easily make, season 1, season 1 and 2 adapting the first game and season 3 adapting the second game, or however they want to go about it. There's also the DLC, Last of Us Left Behind. So they have multiple places that they can pull from. One thing I really appreciated was Neil Druckmann is serving as co-showrunner. He is the writer director of the Last of Us game. So he said in an interview that this is essentially his director's cut, right? So everything that couldn't make it into the video game, they're adding and weaving into this story. So that might help stretch it out a little bit too. But yeah, I feel like I heard Craig Manzin, the other showrunner, say that if they get a season 2, they're just going to do the second game. So it's probably going to be the entirety of The Last of Us in season 1, and then the entirety of The Last of Us 2 in seasons 2 and 3, which I think they're lucky enough to get because again, second biggest premiere in HBO history. So I think we're good on that front. But yeah, definitely a valid concern is running out of material, especially in HBO's case, because we saw what happened to Game of Thrones.
Yeah, and I've never seen the show, but I do know just from hearing from just word of mouth that they started to run out of things to do, and they were just like, what do we do now? And so
Yeah,
they were just faking it till they make it. And from what I've read, they didn't make it.
not one bit. So yeah, that is a bit, especially again since HBO has a history with this being an issue. That's a very valid question and concern. But yeah, like even the idea of 9 episodes, how long is it gonna take? How long is this adventure gonna wear thin? Like this was a episode that was like almost an hour and a half. Can they really stretch the Joel, Ellie, Tess traveling across the city? Because they didn't even make it seem like it was a very long venture. It's not like they had to go from coast to coast or anything. So it's
Yeah,
gonna
they
be
they've barely left Boston at the end of this episode. They just
yes,
crossed over into the quarantine zone. So
yep,
they just literally just left the mainline Boston as we know it. And so now and they're going to Wyoming. They're going from the East Coast to the West Coast, like you said.
yep.
So I don't want it to be like season 3 premiere and they're still walking across the country. Like they need to get some segues or something to speed.
Right. They need that's why they were looking for that freaking battery during the episode so they can drive cross country as opposed to doing it on foot, because that would turn this into the Lord of the Rings essentially, and I don't know how that would work.
Yeah, and I don't want it to turn into a Hobbit thing where it's like they take one book and they just
Yeah,
stretch it to barely 3. So I don't want that to happen.
for sure. Before we move on though, we do have a quote here from Deadline. This is from Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin, the showrunners, just thanking the fans and the audience for tuning in, making this the second biggest premiere in HBO history, at least the last decade. They say, quote, "Our focus was simply to make the best possible adaptation of this beloved story for as big an audience as we could. We are overjoyed to see how many fans, both old and new, have welcomed The Last of Us into their homes and their hearts." And for me, that is the biggest victory, right, of this entire thing, is that Old and new fans are both loving this show. We were talking just last week about the Rotten Tomatoes score. The audience score as well has skyrocketed to like a 96. So critics, fans, old comers, newcomers, they're all loving the first episode. Hopefully episode 2 keeps that momentum.
Yeah, and it's interesting because again, I'm new to Last of Us, so I am not as familiar with the nuances, but I was watching the show and thinking to myself, this might be like the first original anything related to zombies that I have seen in a very long time. Or if it's pulling from anything, it's really only pulling from the best material, like your Romero's, your
Yeah.
like your stuff like that. But again, I might be missing certain things, but it seems like it's based on a video game, yes, but it's based on an original idea. Like, I mean, zombie stories, they've been done nearly to death since Night of the Living Dead. But
Right.
this might be one of the more original that I personally have ever seen.
Yeah, that's why this story has stood the test of time, because it came out during the height of the zombie era, right? In 2013, that's when the game came out. And so we had The Walking Dead, we had all these movies, we had Train to Busan come out around the same time, and it's like there's a lot of things zombie related. And initially the fan base rejected the game, right? They rejected the idea of, great, another zombie story. This is tired. This is boring. But then it came out, and exactly what you said, right? You were able to see that, yeah, it's an original story. Like, I love that you mentioned the very beginning of the episode, and they tell you how the cordyceps works and how this mushroom works. And so it adds a layer of realism, even though it's still very much science fiction. It adds that layer of realism to it, to where you're like, yeah, this could potentially happen, especially, coming out of COVID a couple years ago. It adds a certain level of anxiety and dread to it, because it's like, yeah, this can potentially happen. And since they're not just normal zombies, they're just being taken over by this rogue plant, essentially. It does make it different, and it's going to be fascinating to see how the show develops it, because there are things from the game that they have gone on record to say that they cut regarding how this clicker infection works. So it's going to be fascinating to see how it comes together going in episode 2.
Yeah, and I'm personally very tired of COVID stuff in my movies. I mean,
Yeah.
if unless you're like Steven Soderbergh and directing Kimmy, which is a very good movie straight on HBO Max, I recommend it wholeheartedly. I haven't really seen that many good COVID related anything or have any good COVID allegories as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
But this episode was probably the one where I was like, wait, that language and that terminology sounds way too familiar to me at this point.
Yeah.
It made me like sit up and be like, yeah, I've been through something like this. Not as extreme as this, but I've been through something like this.
Yeah, it makes hindsight so bizarre. Like, this is, again, these are all themes and ideas from the game in 2013, and me watching that episode, I'm just like, wow, simpler time when I thought all of this was fiction.
Sadly.
Now it's reality. You know what is one of my favorite bits from The Last of Us, though, is that we just keep seeing Pedro Pascal be a great dad.
Mm.
And that takes us to topic number 2. Mando is back with Grogu. I don't know if you're a huge Star Wars fan or not, Ryan, but this is a great trailer. Like, did you get a chance to watch it at all?
I did. And I actually was for one of the podcasts I'm a part of, called Discussing DreamWorks, I was watching Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron. That's our next episode. And I was rewatching that, and I was scrolling through my phone, and sure enough, I was like, oh, Mandalorian trailer just dropped. I did not see this coming, but I got to see it. And yes, it is a very good trailer. My love of Star Wars has diminished in recent years, mostly because of just the god-awful fan base as just one big circular firing squad of who's the bigger fan. I've just
Yeah.
grown tired of it. And just the fact that so much Star Wars related stuff comes out on a regular basis, it's felt a lot less special to me. Again, this is just me. I'm just speaking my own opinion, so that this is just me, so take that with a grain of salt. I love The Mandalorian. I love everything about it. I devoured the first season. I got Disney Plus because of The Mandalorian. And yeah, Disney Plus is a great service. You get all of Disney's stuff, all their back catalog, and it's a great value. But I got it day one because of The Mandalorian. And I devoured season one and I devoured season two. I know some people weren't a big fan of the Luke Skywalker Easter egg. I personally really liked it. I thought it was cool. And so seeing this, it just brought a smile to my face because it looks like they're going to be building on what they built upon in season two. Grogu's going to kick a little butt, which I am going to love. I hope they bring back formerly known as Sasha Banks, but currently known as Mercedes Monet, Mercedes Vernado, alongside Katie Sackhoff and the Mandalorian core. Jin says in the trailer that he's going to Mandalore, so that's going to be exciting. So there's a lot to love here. And you're muted, Mike.
That happens all the time. I'm used to it. But there's so much in this trailer. And, I wasn't the biggest fan of season 2 of The Mandalorian. I think a lot of my issues did come with the Luke stuff. Just kind of felt like a Deus Ex Machina in a way for me. Like he just kind of abruptly shows up at the end there. And me, I guess, not being the biggest of Star Wars fans, that just didn't do much for me personally. But I did like what we got from them in the Book of Boba Fett. I do think it's kind of weird how we resolve the whole issue of them splitting up, Mando and Grogu splitting up in a different show.
Wow. Don't get me started on that show.
I wonder if somebody has actually not watched Book of Boba Fett and then they see this trailer and they're just like, what happened? Why are they back together? What's going on?
Why is he no longer a Mandalorian? Like, I have so many questions.
Yeah, so much happened for Din in that completely unrelated series. I mean, it's a spinoff, I guess, but that's still confusing. But this is coming from Lucasfilm. This is the synopsis that they had. The journeys of the Mandalorian through the Star Wars galaxy continue. Once a lone bounty hunter, Din Djarin has reunited with Grogu. Meanwhile, the New Republic struggles to lead the galaxy away from its dark history. The Mandalorian will cross paths with old allies and make new enemies as he and Grogu continue their journey together. The Mandalorian Season 3 will air on Disney Plus March 1st. This is so soon.
Yeah. And I mean, let's talk about how loaded a month March is going to be. I mean, we're getting John Wick Chapter 4. We're getting Shazam, and add Mandalorian onto that. And I'm sure I'm missing some big ones, but March is just like, ugh, so much stuff.
March is stacked. And I do, again, segueing from Pedro Pascal's current series with The Last of Us into this one, I do think it is very funny how by the time we get to like episode 8 or 9, the end of the season for The Last of Us, The Mandalorian drops. And it's just like, okay, great counter programming. Great to see Pedro Pascal still on our TV screens.
It's going to be a great year for Pedro Pascal, that's for sure.
Yeah. Dude is making bank, and I love it because he's fantastic as Joel. He's fantastic as Din. Like, he's great.
And one of the things I liked about season 2 of The Mandalorian is that they pushed Din out of his comfort zone. Like, he had to unmask for the first time in the show's history. And it was for a mission, that the one involving Bill Burr. He had to do it for a mission, but we actually saw his face. And I'm sure we all know what Pedro Pascal's face looks like. But throughout the entirety of season 1, we didn't see his face. And it was for the reason that a Mandalorian doesn't show his face. And it was in the right context of he had to do a job, but he was just like, he was not feeling it at all. But I liked it. I liked the moral dilemma there. And so my hope for season 3 is that they keep pushing Din forward, giving him new stuff to try and conquer. Yeah. And it seems like, according to the synopsis you read, they're going to try it and tie it in a little bit to The Force Awakens, or not The Force Awakens, but the new trilogy with the First Order. God, I hope so, because the First Order just kind of came out of nowhere and just no one seems to know why. So here's
I
the
still want to
hoping.
know the Knights of Ren. Like, what's going on? What was their deal? We just never got anything on that.
Hopefully it is explained. But just from this trailer, I'm very excited. The prospects are looking very good.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What's up on Twitch? Thanks for joining us. So, before we wrap up today's episode, we got to talk about Vin Diesel, because this has been one of the funniest stories of the day for me. Uh, there's a story that's by Empire, and they're just like, "Hey, no, Vin Diesel's not in Avatar 3," and literally everybody's gonna be like, "Huh? Who? What do you mean he was supposed to be in Avatar 3?" This takes us again to Empire magazine, where they're breaking down this insane story. Apparently, for the last 3 years, like since 2020, fans have speculated Vin Diesel being a part of the Avatar franchise. This is the James Cameron franchise, for the weird people who are still thinking The Last Airbender when I say that. I'm sorry. um, but yeah, apparently he met with James Cameron on set of The Way of Water and posted this video on his Instagram. We're gonna play this. Hopefully the audio kicks in for you guys.
Of Avatar 2, 3, 4, and 5. This is top secret. It's like the Manhattan Project. With my old buddy Vin, and we're actually going to give him the flashy thing from Men in Black after when he leaves here. So he has no memory whatsoever of what he's seen, because he can not carry the tale. And you guys, actually, we're going to have to flash you too,
Yeah.
because you're not cleared either.
Yeah, you never saw
This
this.
is top secret shit.
You never saw this.
You didn't see this.
But I'll tell you, it's long overdue. There is one person in Hollywood I've always wanted to work with and learn from. And where is he? Where is he?
Yeah, where's that guy?
And so all things come, I guess, to those that
you will learn, Grasshopper.
I am learning now.
So this
Okay, so
video
you're
is
on the
also captioned by Vin Diesel saying, "And the journey continues. Hashtag blessed. Hashtag grateful. Hashtag Avatar." So now, with context, I can totally see why people would assume he is a part of this franchise. But no. One of the producers for Avatar, John Lando, has come out and said, quote, "He came in, visited the set one day to see what we were doing, and people took that out of context." Ryan, is this the people's fault, or is this Vin's fault for thinking that he was going to be a part of Avatar?
I honestly don't know. From what I've read, Vin Diesel is a huge nerd in real life, so
Yeah.
maybe he might have thought that he was going to be a part of it, and maybe he knows James Cameron, or maybe they met and they became friends. I am not entirely sure. I did not know that this story was a thing until I read the notes in preparation for this stream. So, and I was talking to you before we went live. It's not too far out of bounds for Vin Diesel to be a part of an Avatar movie if they really wanted to go that way. I'm not sure if they should, but it wouldn't be too crazy. I mean, it's not the first time that Vin Diesel's been in mocap. And, I mean, Avatar's all about family. So, I mean, you got the ultimate family man right here. It's
Very
like,
true.
It's like a license to do it right here. But there's a big difference between should it happen and will it happen. And will it happen? Probably not.
Probably not, but I mean, it'd be fun. Like you said, he has a lot of experience doing voice acting. I think you're right. The whole family angle it would be a hilarious meme if that's like the only line he says, like a cameo. He just comes out like, "You got to do it for family," and then he dies protecting the Na'vi. That'd be hilarious. But yeah, it's kind of, this is a weird story because Vin Diesel, much like Dwayne The Rock Johnson, ironically, just make sure he keeps his name out there, regardless of what it is. He just makes sure he stays relevant in some way. Like how The Rock kept instigating a fight between him and Superman for some reason. It's like he keeps sowing the seeds and probably eventually hopes that the fans push for it. So when we get to Avatar 4, Cameron's like, all right, you're in. We'll do this. But yeah, speaking of Avatar, they're closing in on like $2 billion at the box office.
Wow.
So it's a monster. I'm not surprised more actors aren't trying to get involved in that franchise.
You know, when I finally saw that teaser trailer for Avatar: The Way of Water, like all those months ago, when I saw it, I was like, okay, I think Cameron stumbled onto something great. And while I don't love Avatar: The Way of Water, I totally get why it has become the success that it has become, because it's of incredibly high quality.
For sure. It is a beautifully made movie. I don't know if the characters or the story are going to stick with me the way that I want from my movies. Mostly, like I'm a big proponent of heart in the storytelling, right? And I just don't have a connection to these characters, but it's masterfully crafted. Like that's why James Cameron is one of the best directors of all time, because the way that they were able to bring that universe to life, especially after so many people doubted them, thinking it was just lightning in a bottle, right? But Cameron showed that he's essentially Zeus, and lightning will just strike whenever he wants it to.
Yeah,
You know?
it is. And to be fair, I remember like 2013 or 14 thing to myself, if an Avatar sequel hasn't come out by now, it's never coming out.
Yeah.
Like just like talk about striking while the iron was stone cold. It was like, dude, come on now. But I was wrong. Like the dude was he was like, wait for it. Now it was like waiting for like the downbeat in the beginning of a great song. Is like
True.
waiting for the downbeat on When the Levee Breaks from Led Zeppelin. When you hear Jimmy Page saying, if it keeps on raining, levee's going to break, is like, it was worth it. It was worth the wait.
100%. That wraps up the news topics for today. If you guys want to continue hearing us talk about The Last of Us here on the channel, Beyond the Clicker starts in like 10 minutes. So make sure you're here for Brett and Brandon as they break down episode 1. But before we wrap up, Ryan, was there anything else you wanted to talk about? We've got a couple minutes before the next stream starts.
No, I think we covered just about everything.
Nice.
Just wanted to get out there that on my channel, this in just a few days, this coming Monday, Mike is going to be joining me as we cover The Last Airbender in my Shyamalan project.
Yeah.
So I had to get the biggest Avatar The Last Airbender fan that I could find, and Mike was my guy. So I thank you in advance for suffering with me through it, but it's hopefully going to be some fun ripping the movie apart, but that will be over on my channel.
For sure. We're going to link that in the description of the YouTube video for you guys. For you guys on Twitch, just check out Ryan Cam. It's Ryan Cam 20 on Twitter, right?
Yes.
Right here on the screen. You just check him out on Twitter. You can get the YouTube link from there as well. It's going to be so much fun roasting The Last Airbender because, my gosh, is that movie an abomination. It's awful.
Yeah, but in better not better series, but in more lighter series on my channel, I will be continuing my road to Creed 3 by covering Rocky 3, starring both Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. We'll be pitying some fools and bringing the pain. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Rocky 3 might be my favorite of the series, honestly. It is just so ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, of the Rocky series, the Creed ones I consider separate, but
I mean, like more than 4. I mean, 4. I mean, come on, you got the robot in there. Come on.
Yeah, that's when it fell off the rails for me. It's like Rocky's got a robot in the 80s. I don't vibe with that. I know it's weird for somebody who loves fantasy. For some reason, robots in the Rocky franchise is where I draw the line. I'm sorry. That's just me. But yeah, can't wait to check out all that great stuff. Again, guys, here on YouTube and Twitch, Beyond the Clickers starts in 10 minutes. Make sure you're there. Make sure you've seen The Last of Us so you can join that conversation. For more of the Chatter After Daily, we're going to be back on Thursday. And stay tuned on the Chatter After channel because there's a lot of stuff coming. We just did Vox Machina Season 2, which drops on Friday. Go listen to our spoiler-free review with Christian from Film Optics so you don't miss that. And until next time, keep watching movies, keep playing games, keep watching shows. Peace.